Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and the episode you're about to hear is part of our World Cup warm-up series, checking in with writers and broadcasters around the world to get local takes on various national teams in advance of the World Cup. Today's guest is Rory Smith. Rory is an English football journalist who's written for The Telegraph, The Independent and The Times and many others. He also appears on BBC Radio 5 Live. Since 2006, Rory has been chief soccer correspondent at The New York Times, and I thoroughly recommend that you read his writing. I'll put a link to Rory's NYT archive in the show notes. I called Rory while he was in Rome, ahead of the Roma-Liverpool second leg, but we talked about the England national team. What are the team's strengths, weaknesses? What is the mood like back home? And what would count as a successful summer for Gareth Southgate's team? Here's our conversation. So I'm joined on the phone from Rome by Rory Smith. Rory, welcome to the Total Soccer Show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I'm going to take a guess at why you're in Rome. It's for the Champions League semi-final second leg.
It is, yeah. It's not just a coincidence. I was in Madrid last night and then Rome today.
Can I assume that this is in your role as chief soccer correspondent for the New York Times?
It is, yes, correct.
So I want to start, before we talk about England, first I want to start with some flattery, which is that you're one of my favourite voices that I hear from British media. Like anytime there's sort of people shouting on 5 Live, I feel like you're always the voice of reason to come in there.
That's very kind. I'm not sure it's entirely true.
I'm also interested in your role at the New York Times, because that's an odd job for a London-based journalist to take, right? So I wondered, what was the reaction like in England when you took that job, sort of amongst your fellow journos?
I think they were glad to be rid of me. People obviously were quite pleased that I got the chance to work at the New York Times. I think there was a degree of surprise that an American newspaper should be sufficiently interested in European soccer to hire someone to write about it specifically. There's maybe a little bit of bafflement, a little bit of not quite suspicion's probably pushing it, but surprise, yeah, I think that's probably fair. But now it's kind of accepted, ESPN cover soccer in as much detail as they cover all the US sports. There's American reporters everywhere. We see TV crews from NBC, from Fox, at games all of the time. I think it's understood in England now that it's big business in the States as well.
That's interesting, because I left England in 2005 when that wasn't the case. So it's interesting to hear maybe how perceptions have changed a little bit about what's happening here in the US. I've got to say, I really like your column. It seems like you basically get the whole week to think up a nice big topic to write about.
Yeah, we kind of have the approach that, the way I'm always slightly conscious that I shouldn't say that we have the approach, because I might be getting it completely wrong. But the way I understand our approach is that we can't compete with the British papers. We can't cover transfer stories in as much detail. We can't keep up with every press conference. We can't cover every single game. And also, readers have the places they want to go. And, if someone's been reading The Guardian for 10, 15, 20 years and really enjoys their football coverage, which is excellent, they're not going to suddenly think, Rory Smith writes in the New York Times, I'm going to read that instead. There's an idea that that's kind of a limited market, that football isn't exactly undercovered as it is. So we kind of, when I joined, the plan was kind of to say, we're not going to try and compete with them, but we can supplement their coverage. We can do things differently. We can do things that they're not doing, and that's how we carve out a place in the firmament. Really, that's how we become somewhere that people do associate with football coverage, albeit slightly different type of football coverage to what they might get in the Telegraph or the Guardian or the Times in London. So I think that makes sense to me, and we try and still give that balance to our. We have an international audience. We still try and give that balance to the American readers and say that we are on the ground covering this stuff that you're watching on TV, and you want to know more about it, and if you want to kind of know the behind the scenes element, we do that as well. And then we try and do stories that appeal to a European audience because they might not have heard them before. So it's a really broad brief, and it's quite a challenging one, because there's quite a lot of football on balance. Overall, I'd say there's quite a lot of football, but it's a really privileged position to be in, to be able to kind of write about stuff that I find interesting.
Well, I'm happy to spend the majority of my 10 free articles a month on your column.
It's down to 5 now. You need to be careful.
Oh no,
it's down to 5. They cut it. I know.
Maybe it's high time I subscribe then.
I don't want to sort of force your hand, but certainly if you're regularly using up your 10 free articles, then then that maybe suggests that it's time to get a subscription.
That's true. All right, so the main reason I really wanted to talk to you is I wanted to talk England. We're, 6 weeks or so away from the start of the World Cup. And as I mentioned earlier, I usually really like your takes on England. They seem sort of more better thought out than the usual arguments about passion and foreigners and this and that. But first, I want to sort of take the temperature of England, sort of in the media and among the people. Because I haven't been home in a year or so. How are people feeling about the World Cup? Are we in one of those moments where everybody's suddenly getting super confident, which is what I think I remember happening before World Cups? Or is everybody convinced that this team is terrible and we're going to finish bottom of the group again?
Kind of somewhere in between, I think. That's probably fair to say. I mean, I should point out that, strictly speaking, because we're in the middle of the Champions League, there's still English interest in that. Obviously, we've still got the relegation battle. There's, in theory, a battle for the top four. Chelsea can still theoretically catch Liverpool or Spurs. Everyone is still mainly thinking about the Premier League. So you started to notice in the last, month or 2 months, I guess, those stories creeping in. So when Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain went off injured against Roma in the first leg, it wasn't just that his season is over for Liverpool and that he might miss the Champions League final. It's that he's going to miss the World Cup. And that I always think is the significant kind of point at which you can tell people are starting to think slightly differently, and the World Cup is on their horizon when injuries aren't judged in terms of weeks and months, but in terms of whether they miss the World Cup or not. I
saw a story this morning about people who are worried about Harry Kane sort of being in peak fitness or not for the World Cup. And then I also saw a story on Sky Sports that England, some data firm has made England fifth favourites for the World Cup. And I really thought, this is the beginning of all that pre-World Cup stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So there's always that balance, isn't there, that we kind of trick ourselves into thinking that the expectations themselves are or have been the problem previously. So if expectations are too high, we know that that's bad because it means that England can't live up to them and there's too much pressure. But equally, the kind of flip side of that is that once expectations are quite low, people start saying, expectations are low this time, so that won't be a problem. Maybe England will win the World Cup. And the kind of low expectations don't really exist in England, except as a mechanism to raise them again. And it's this weird kind of binary that we exist in. I think the balance is somewhere in between. I think there's an awareness that there are better teams than England out there, that Brazil and Germany and Spain and probably France will all be stronger. You throw Argentina into that mix as well, although they're a little bit more unpredictable. And I think there's an acceptance that those five would be the countries that we would expect to win the World Cup. But at the same time, there is a sense around England that for all this uncertainty over certain positions, and if you look in midfield and defence in particular, it's quite hard to pick an 11 that you think, right, that is definitely England's best 11. It's a fair reflection of the talent available to the country. I think there's a sense that there is a pool of players that's quite big who are competent, who could all kind of slot in various positions and various formations. And there's a sense of youth as well, as that this isn't, when Wayne Rooney retired, that was kind of the last link with the golden generation. There's a sense of renewal almost about this team. Harry Kane isn't touched by the golden generation failures. Dele Alli isn't. Right. Even Jordan Henderson, people like that, they're not. So I think there is a sense that this is a different type of England team. This is the start of something, and there will be a degree of patience because it's the start of something. But I wouldn't expect that patience to last if they get knocked out in the last 16 by Senegal. I think England still has that level of self-confidence, self-belief that anything less than the quarters is obviously a failure, and if you go out in the quarters in the wrong way, that can be a failure too.
Yeah, I keep thinking of it as I want England to sort of do something memorable, as in maybe just beat one big team, because it feels like forever since that has happened, and also not embarrass us with a loss to a team like Iceland.
Yeah, which doesn't sound too much to ask. I mean, the difficulty is where they are in the draw. Obviously, they've got Belgium in the group, and I think a win against Belgium would count as a significant result and would be the sort of thing that would maybe galvanise the nation behind the team.
Yeah.
But then they're likely to get a Colombia or a Senegal or a Poland in the last 16, which isn't going to be the glamorous sort of knockout tie that they need. The chances are, if and when they run into a big team, it will be the quarterfinals, and it will be someone who can win it. And that will be the test.
I was looking at the group stage and then how the sort of bracket works afterwards, and it looks like, I mean, I don't want to sort of get ahead of myself, but it would be maybe Germany or Brazil in the quarterfinals, and then that's the big test, right?
Yeah, that's the point at which I think we can all accept. I think if you that's the thing. So if England lose to Brazil 2 or 3-1 in the quarterfinals, I don't think they come home in disgrace. That's definitely a change from, say, 2002, when they were well beaten by Brazil with 10 men in the quarterfinals, and it was decided that was in some way unacceptable. Although I forget precisely why it was unacceptable, but I think if they lose to Brazil or Germany, that there will be an acceptance. The mood of the country is such that there will be an acceptance that that's not disgraceful, that's not embarrassing to lose to Brazil or Germany. As I say, I think if they go out in the last 16 to a lesser team, although Colombia and Senegal and Poland have all got top-class players available to them, probably as many genuinely top-class players available to them as England do, which is something that we always overlook with those smaller countries. That if you look at Senegal, they've got Sadio Mane, they've got Kalidou Koulibaly, they've got Idrissa Gueye. There is a selection of, they've got 4 or 5 quite talented, high-profile strikers, and if you on paper the difference between the squads isn't vast, but because it's Senegal, that won't count for anything, and that won't be taken into consideration. Colombia even more so. Colombia have a team probably on paper that's better than England, but losing to Colombia would be considered embarrassing. So I think it depends to an extent how they go out, when they go out, and who they go out to, whether a campaign is considered a failure, because there is this weird thing where, even though I think everyone accepts that the quarterfinals is probably England's natural place, that slightly inside of that is the bar between failure and success, that there is this suspicion that with a fair wind, with a bit of luck, they could make the semis, because England is I'm not a sort of St George waving England fan, but there is a belief, and I think it's right, that England is a major football nation and is the sort of country that should be in that conversation about the 8 or 10 potential semi-finalists. And I think that's something that's really hard for the country to let go of. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily find itself influenced by reality.
Well, speaking of reality, let's focus in on the team itself. The way Gareth Southgate has got this team set up, the personnel he's got, what would you say is the biggest strength of this England team?
It sounds weird, and it sounds like it's damn with faint praise, but it's versatility. I think that's one thing that England have now that they haven't had previously, which is an ability to play in different systems, to play in different formations. They're all working with high-quality foreign coaches, basically. Within the Premier League, there's a couple of Burnley players, defensive players who benefit from the fact that in Sean Dyche they have a forward-thinking, progressive, very good coach. But the majority of top 6 players, they're working with 6 of the 10 best managers in the world. And I think they are all capable of playing. England could play a 4-3-3, could play a 3-5-2, could play a 3-4-3. They could play sort of 4-4-2 with Ali behind Kane. There's lots of options available to them and available to Southgate. And that, in kind of traditional English football discourse, that's bad, because we like to know our first 11. There's a real... And even I don't consider myself kind of, again, that type of football fan, but... And certainly in terms of the Premier League or Serie A or La Liga, you don't think about teams anymore in terms of what's their 11. You think about teams in terms of, how strong is their 18, their 23. And that hasn't really shifted into the way that we think about the English national team. So there's still an idea that it's a weakness not to know your best 11. But I think in reality it's probably a strength to think I have 16 or 17 players who could play any system that I deem necessary in any kind of configuration and do well at it. And if you look at people like Eric Dyer, Henderson to an extent, Wilshere, Ali, Sterling, they can all play different roles, slightly tweaked roles, deeper, further forwards, in defence, in midfield. And I think that's a real strength for England. It gives them a flexibility that they haven't had recently. And if you put on top of that 2 or 3 genuinely top-class players, in terms of Harry Kane, Sterling and Ali probably, then you have a good mix. That's not a bad way to approach the tournament.
So I think, you're right that the shape could change because of that versatility. But I think the style of play, it seems like Southgate is very committed to, we will play out of the back. And the moment it sort of clicked for me is when he did not select Chris Smalling. And then I was really impressed with the way he just explained the reason for not selecting Chris Smalling is that he's not the best at passing the ball out of the back. And, we're going to build around someone like John Stones instead. Does that fill you with confidence, or does that make you worry that there could be a moment of panic coming out of the back at the World Cup? Like if John Stones gets tackled by Blas Perez of Panama, sorry. You know what I'm saying? So are you confident about that, or are you worried?
I think it's the right thing to do, but I think it comes with attendant risks. So that's the way that all of these players are being taught to play at club level. It wouldn't make sense really to suddenly get them back to the England national team and say you've got to boot the ball out from the back and we're going long ball because that's what we did 30 years ago. I think it makes sense to try to play a progressive style. That's the way that the other crucial thing is obviously this is all part of the England DNA thing that the FA have introduced to try and encourage a distinctive style for the national team so that it's not just a mix and match of different club teams. So that's what the FA are wedded to. Southgate is very much an FA man, and I think there's no chance of him deviating from that. My slight concern is that I think that when Southgate first broached the idea of playing three at the back, it was at a time when you looked around England's resources, you thought, okay, that makes sense because ball-playing central defenders suddenly looked like they were a strength. With John Stones being the best example, but Eric Dyer can slot in there as well. As things stand, I'm not sure that's true. I don't think they necessarily have the resources to play three at the back against the very best teams, because I think that the defenders they will be playing would be of lower quality than the midfielders or the forwards they might bring in. And that's my concern with it, that I'm not sure the formation, the style I think works, the formation I'm not sure that Southgate I think believes offers the best defensive platform to build from the back. I'm not sure that formation accentuates England's strength. That would be my concern with it.
And should we be worried about John Stones' lack of playing time for Manchester City recently?
That's one of those, you can see the positive or the negative. It's glass half full, glass half empty. He'll be very fresh for the tournament. He won't be tired. But the fact that he has fallen out of favour at City, that's undeniable. And after he's been so sort of fervently defended for so long by Pep Guardiola, that is in itself significant. So Southgate, I think, has been quite big on saying that he won't pick players who aren't playing for their club teams. And with every squad, with every nation, there's always one or two exceptions to that rule. Stones will be in the squad. There's no question about that. And I suspect he'll start. And you have to hope that he's played enough not to be rusty, that his confidence hasn't suffered because he's been out of the team, that he can find that rhythm again, or even that Guardiola obviously decides to slot him back in now that City have won the title and there is nothing really to play for them. So, yeah, it could be a positive. It means he could go into the tournament, fresh as a daisy, happy to play, delighted to have the chance to play, determined to prove himself. Or it could be a negative because he could be a little bit rusty and a little bit low on confidence. And to be honest, there's not really any way of predicting that until he gets there and plays football.
So you think Stones? I mean, I think as well. Stones will definitely be named among the preliminary squad and the final 23. What do you see as the big question marks around when Southgate has to decide who he's taking to Russia?
I think the midfield is a really interesting one. It looks like we obviously know he's going to take Harry Kane. He's been very loyal to Danny Welbeck, so I think he'll be in the squad. There's maybe a shortage of wide players because both Lallana and Oxlade-Chamberlain, who could fill in those roles, are injured. So I think there'll be a lot of emphasis on Sterling. Obviously, Ali will start. Henderson, I would expect, will be captain. It's certainly him or Kane. So that kind of is the spine of it. Around that, I think it's slightly less certain. It's hard to. You can make a case for Wilshere, who's had quite a good season. Maybe not quite a good season, but quite a good last few weeks. And who is that technical player that England maybe lacks. But away from him, it's hard to think of genuinely top-class alternatives. And it does make you wonder whether maybe England's midfield is a little bit kind of underpowered compared to against Panama and Tunisia. It shouldn't be a problem, with all due respect to those nations. They will work hard and they'll be well organised and they will have talent. They're not, there's no such thing as a patsy team in the World Cup anymore. But England should have enough to get past them. Against Belgium, potentially against Senegal or Colombia in the last 16, and then against one of the real giants in the quarter-finals. You wonder whether that might be the area where England's just come unstuck a little bit. Injuries haven't helped, but I'm not sure it's necessarily an area of great strength for England at the moment.
So I'm concerned about the Tunisia and the Panama games, and I don't know if it's just sort of a muscle memory type thing. I've just seen England struggle to break down a team so many times at a tournament that That's the big thing I'm looking for, is whether England will struggle against, because Panama, I've seen Panama play before being here in the US. They play often a sort of 4-5-1 or a 4-5-1 and really sit back and get ready to counter. And, they'll try and just sort of, they've got like a long throw, and they've got Blas Perez really is a sort of a pain to deal with. And I'm concerned that there'll be just trouble breaking down a team that's sitting back.
I think both of those teams will be quite cautious, and I think the likelihood of England turning in a performance that is universally interpreted as being very impressive against either Panama or Tunisia is unlikely, just because they will be well organised, they will be disciplined, they will have a plan, they will not try to go toe-to-toe with England. It will be frustrating for them, but you'd expect them to get past both of them, even if it's not convincing, and that obviously will be enough to secure qualification from the group, which is the first hurdle they have to clear. Against Belgium, I think then that's the test. That's when it's a litmus test of when we see where England are as a team. And Belgium aren't perfect. I don't think they'll win it, but they will have ambitions to get to the quarterfinals without question. And it will be how England cope with them. Particularly if, and I think you're right, that if they are kind of under pressure because they haven't really convinced against Panama or Tunisia, and the context of those games isn't taken into consideration, that might prove a bit more of an obstacle for England than it should do. But I do think, and again, I won't claim to be an expert on Panama or Tunisia. I know that they both have a reputation for being dogged, shall we say, and very. I'm not sure Tunisia conceded a goal in qualification. They're not going to roll over for England by any stretch of the imagination. I think England will beat both of them, or certainly should beat both of them. The question mark then is, do they finish first or second in the group, behind Belgium or above them? And that will maybe then decide exactly how the tournament goes and how it's interpreted. Okay,
so there's usually some sort of metatarsal crisis in the weeks before the tournament. Is there one player, or who is the one player that we should panic about an injury to?
Well, I think Kane is the one that you'd worry about at the moment, because certainly watching him recently, he isn't fit. He's come back, I think, too soon from the injury he picked up. I'm not saying Spurs have rushed him back. I suspect he rushed himself back. But particularly in the FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United, he was totally anonymous, did nothing, didn't look like he was ready to be playing. And I think that will be the area of concern. It'll be interesting to see whether he continues to play out the season for Spurs. I suspect he will, because he'll want to try and catch Mohamed Salah to the top scorer position. That might count against England. He would be the worry. I think, funnily enough, that the big injury blow may well already have happened, and that's Oxlade-Chamberlain, who was in great form for Liverpool and is a really trusted kind of member of Southgate squad, having won his place back, and who offered them that crucial flexibility. Could play wide right, could play central midfield, real energy, real drive in there, and obviously brimming with confidence after the season he's had. So I think that is a blow in itself, but the real worry will be Kane. But the irony with Kane is that obviously if Kane were to suffer a metatarsal injury or whatever the injury du jour is this year, then Jamie Vardy is a more than able understudy, and to an extent might suit England's style a little bit more, particularly against the big teams, because he has the pace to play on the counter-attack. That's how he's used to playing at Leicester. That gets the best out of him. So it's a position where I think they do have strength in them. If Kane falls, then Vardy can come in. But Kane is such a kind of talismanic figure for them as the goal scorer, as the golden boy. I think if he's not there and if he's not firing, that would be a blow.
Final question is goalkeeper. I've got a feeling it's Jordan Pickford. What do you think is going to happen?
I go along with you. I think it has to be Pickford, because he's the one who's been the most impressive this season. Joe Hart obviously hasn't played regularly. He's been in and out of West Ham's team. When he's been in West Ham's team, he has not looked particularly convincing. I think that if they want to play a kind of a patient building from the back style, then I think Pickford's better suited to that anyway. Jack Butland is obviously the other one in contention ahead of Nick Pope. I think Butland is likely to be the second choice, purely because to me, and I think to Southgate, I think Pickford is the better, the more talented. Done well this season, but not as well as Pickford. And it was an interesting test, that, because in previous years, Hart would have come back in, because England managers always revert to what they know, and they revert to the safe option, and they basically do what is likely to get them less criticism if it fails. And that is always playing the older player, the more experienced player. I don't think Southgate's like that, and I suspect like you, that it will be Pickford. But the strange thing is that he's only got a handful of caps. You know, he's not experienced. You're going in essentially with a rookie goalkeeper, which is a risk. But I think on the grounds of performance, which is what Southgate has made it clear he's picking by, I think it has to be Pickford.
Do you think Southgate's braver than England managers past?
I think he's maybe more self-confident. I think he believes completely in the process, which is a very sort of trendy football thing to say now. But I think he's been involved with the England setup for a long time. He's part of the project to kind of redesign the way the national teams work. The England DNA thing, you know, it's not his brainchild, but it's something that he's always signed up to. I don't think he wants to abandon it just because he's now in the main job in the hot seat. So it's not maybe that he's braver than Capello or Ericsson, and I think to an extent both Capello and Ericsson had a kind of detachment from the whole situation that made them able to make difficult decisions more easily, although they didn't always do it. I think Southgate just has a real sense that he has a plan in mind, and he sees it as a work in progress. As I say, he sees this as the start of something, and I think he knows that within the marbled halls of the FA, they see it as the start of something. So that gives him a power, I guess, to say this is the way we're going to do it, and it might not work immediately, but if we stick with it, then it will come good. And I think that is probably the root of what seems to be his courage, but is really more his conviction than anything else.
Does he have support from the media? I wonder, sort of, because he's been around a while, you know, as a player, that a lot of writers might already know him. And I wonder, does he have a lot of goodwill towards him in the media that could, you know, be useful during the tournament?
Yeah, he does. He's well liked. He's a nice bloke. That's the main thing with Southgate. He's a nice bloke. He makes time for journalists, which sounds like it shouldn't be important, and it almost certainly shouldn't be important, but it is, because it's the journalists who, for better or worse, set the tone of the coverage, who write the first draft of history to make what is a very pointless job sound much more important than it is. And I think that having goodwill, having that sort of group of people on side is not going to win you the World Cup. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference. And if they go out in the group stages, it won't save your job. But I think it's something that can help in certain situations. So that the fact that Southgate is well liked is important. As I say, I'm not sure if it all goes terribly wrong that it will make a huge amount of difference. But for the time being, it does create a sense of positivity around England. But Roy Hodgson was well liked. But a lot of journalists had a really good relationship with Roy. He was very, very clubbable, very sociable, very pleasant to be around. And when they went out after Iceland, it didn't get him any sympathy or buy him any time. That said, I suppose you can look at it from the other side, that in Brazil they got knocked out in the group stages and he kept his job. And that may well have been partly because of the expectations around England weren't that high, partly because the group was difficult, but partly because Roy was seen as being worthy of and deserving of another chance, and that may have contributed to it. So Southgate may get more time than others would have done, maybe Sam Allardyce would have done, say, but the fact that he's well liked, that people think of him as being a nice bloke, doesn't necessarily make him bulletproof.
Oh, Rory, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I don't want to take any more of your time. I'll let you go and enjoy the great city of Rome. And I hope you enjoy the game tonight.
The sun's just gone in.
Oh, sorry.
It's very upsetting. It's now cloudy. I think it might rain, which is not part of the deal. I might refuse to cover the game if it's raining. But thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rory.
Cheers.